Hi everyone, I'm Samantha and welcome back to Honey Hill. We are filming part 2 of our June, but it is now July garden tour. We are going to be focusing on the rest of the yard and our new terraced area if you caught our first video. So starting off by the larkspur over here, hidden amongst the larkspur I have several honey Dijon roses which are blooming. I think the larkspur is helping hide them from the deer, which love to come and munch on them. And coming down, I have lots of irises that were in bloom in May. I have some coneflower and more of that yarrow that I started from seed. In the back, I have a David Austin climber, Gertrude Jekyll. She was one of my first roses that I bought. And then this is I believe this is a double Centara lilac, and more of that Dara, the chocolate lace flower. More coneflower in the front, and then this is a self-sown drift of Love in a Mist. So in the back, I have some butterfly weed to try to attract some monarch butterflies. We've had a lot of swallowtails in the garden this season, which are so fun to see. And not looking so great in the back, I have a few hollyhocks, which they're not looking so great this year because we've had, for the first time, there's a lot of first-time bugs we're dealing with this year, and I think because it's our third season in the garden, they're finding us now, and we are dealing with hollyhock weevils, which we haven't dealt with in the past, and they are eating the hollyhocks and making them suffer a little bit. We're also dealing with rose weevil for the first time, and they are chewing holes through the buds of my roses. So I have 3 of those Tasha Tudor hollyhocks, which are really fun, that they're a part of her garden and they're over here in my garden. And not in bloom is this Viburnum Burkwoodii, and there's some phlox in the back, larkspur that had dotted itself around, and then I believe that is a cream veranda rose. Around me here I have 3 Coco Loco roses, and I just cleaned this whole section out yesterday. But before yesterday, you couldn't see any soil in this area, so it looks naked to me because it was filled with the Shirley poppies, Amazing Gray and Pandora, and I let those spread a little bit of seed, and then I pulled out the brown stalks to kind of clear everything out and let the roses, which were not putting on a ton of growth because they were competing for light, to give them their chance to start kicking up this season. Also, I have a drift of irises. Most of these are from Shriner's Iris in Oregon. This was their first, I planted these last summer, and I am actually going to be getting a lot more in later this summer, and we'll be planting those in a future video. I have a primrose lilac right here, and this is a lovely buttery cream colored lilac, a really, really pretty one. In this corner, I have 2 Distant Drums Floribunda roses. I love Distant Drums. It's such a good doer. This is the south side of my garden, and it is the most vulnerable to deer. It's the furthest away from any entrance, and it seems to be the spot where the deer feel most emboldened to come and browse in my garden. So for some reason, these 2 Distant Drums have sustained a lot of deer damage, and they still keep pushing growth and keep blooming. They're about to come into, this is probably their 2nd or 3rd flush of the season. More yarrow. If you can see what I mean from the previous video when I said it's getting a little bit thuggish, I will be thinning it out, but it's also something that the deer don't particularly like, although there was a little bit of damage I noticed in this area by the distant drums earlier in the season, but I think it was probably a young deer that was really not knowing what they like yet, browsing, because really they don't sustain any deer damage. And it's kind of, although it's very overpowering at times, it's kind of nice because it can hide things from deer a little bit. I'm playing that game with them of what can I hide from them, what will they not find. I have some English white lavender. I have 4 of them dotted through the back border, some Nepeta, which I just cut back, a crane's bill geranium, some lupin. Here is one of my, it's hidden in the yarrow, again, something that the deer love to eat, one of my favorite hydrangeas. It's a panicle hydrangea called vanilla strawberry, which will bloom this beautiful, like strawberry sundae-like bloom, although there is a hydrangea called strawberry sundae, which I also have, but this is not it. Over here, I have Queen of Elegance Floribunda rose, which has sustained quite a bit of rose weevil damage. She was planted last year, and she's actually a child of Coco Loco. So she blooms very well. She's got some of the, she ages not in the same colors, but in a similar way as Coco Loco. Over here, I have 2 stainless steel roses not in bloom. The white powder that you might see on the camera on the roses is diatomaceous earth. I just spread some around the garden this morning to try to deal with the earwig problem that we're having. I've never used diatomaceous earth before, so this is a bit of an experiment to see how it helps us with the earwigs. Behind the stainless steel, I have a David Austin named Jubilee Celebration, and she's just about to come into a second flush of bloom. I'm a little bit worried about her that she might have rose mosaic. I'm looking at her leaves and probably going to take a sample into my local rose experts and see if I need to, unfortunately, take her out. But in the meantime, I'm pruning her only with sterile equipment and not spreading that to other roses, so I don't spread rose mosaic if she in fact has it. I have, I believe this is Stand By Me clematis, this bush clematis. Such a pretty, beautiful flower. I have some Japanese anemone, which is not in bloom yet. A lilac that was taken from a cutting from my husband's childhood garden that has not bloomed yet. So I think it's supposed to be an antique double white variety. So we'll see what that looks like maybe next year if it blooms. We have some campanula starts in the back, more iris, a bare root rose I planted this spring, and in the front, this is a, it's called Pocahontas. It's a penstemon, and I just cut her back as well as the Nepeta, and I also just cut back Sally Holmes. Since we're in July, this is like that July lull that many gardeners talk about. We had all the color of spring and early summer, and now we are heading into that midsummer lull and seeing what is actually blooming right now in the garden. Another one of the Tasha Tudor hollyhocks. She does have the hollyhock weevil, but she's still a very beautiful hollyhock. Over here I do have planted a coral charm peony, which is out of bloom, and then 3 more Coco Loco roses. And this is a group of self-sown sweet peas that I just put a bamboo stake here, and I didn't have the heart to pull them out. Last season I had a teepee here with sweet peas growing all around, and some of them dropped their seeds and they grew. I've had sweet peas come up all over my garden this year, And wherever they grow, I try to just give them a little bit of support and have that little bit of fragrance and beauty throughout the garden. All of this dancing in the air is Gara, and under this willow teepee is a baby climbing rose, which is just beautiful, called Butterscotch. And I do have some foxgloves dotted around that self-sowed from last year. So this pot I have by the door, I have some zinnias, which I started from seed from Florette this year. I believe these ones are Golden Hour or Little Flower Girl. And behind it I have two very shaggy looking Betty Corning clematis, one of my absolute favorite varieties of clematis. She smells like, this doesn't sound like it would smell good, but like Fruity Pebbles or something, but in the best way, in a natural way, very fruity and sweet. This is not the right support for her. I'm gonna be probably, when the weather cools way down, transplanting these from the pot and putting them in the ground in the garden. Over here on the steps, I have some pelargoniums and a couple of baby Ash Wednesday climbing roses. These are quite special to me, so I'm kind of babying them in the pots until they get big enough to be put into the landscape somewhere. Our puppy, when I first got these, chomped this rose down literally to the nub, and it has recovered. Thankfully, I almost threw her away and she rebounded. Our puppy Prairie also bit the other one down, but not quite as far, and she's doing well also. So roses are resilient. And then in the back, I have a beautiful rose called Stephen Rouleau. And I have kind of dotted around in the garden, you'll see also these cement leaves, which I made as garden decoration, which I probably will do a video in the future of how I make those. And I did challenge myself this year not to buy a bunch of annuals for containers, just to see if what kind of show I could get from annuals I started myself from seed. And I've had some success and some failures. The annuals I started from seed, primarily phlox and zinnias, don't perform as well, I think, in containers as they do in the ground. But that being said, I have some phlox that I started from seed at the base of this Bloodgood Japanese maple. I have in a container, and then I started this Nicotiana also from seed, and these are just 3 plants here at the base of this peaches and cream honeysuckle, and they've boomed. They're loving this heat that we're having. Over here I have some pincushion flower I started from seed, and this is a Paul Farge clematis, which is just coming into bloom at the top and needs a little bit of training right now. In this pot I have some dahlias and some more of the phlox and the zinnias that I started from seed at the base, and the more white dusting of the diatomaceous earth.